So we might as well make the most of this beautiful sunny day and give this bottom end a little bit of a wash, because underneath here it's full of sludge and oil. So I'm going to throw a little bit of brake cleaner and degreaser on it just to clean it up a little bit. So I'm just going to check to see if it spins. Oh, I thought this motor spun freely before, but uh-oh, could be in trouble. Oh, that used to spin pretty easily. Oh, okay, now I'm upset. Uh-oh. Maybe it just needs a bit of oil in it. I'll take the plugs out, put a little bit of oil in it, but you know what? Let's clean up this bottom end for now and see what we can find underneath here and get all this grease and grime off. What we'll quickly do as well is just make sure the rest of this electrical harness is removed. I'm pretty sure this is the main engine bay loom, and looks like all the battery terminals and cables as well. It's all mostly still connected, and it looks like it's actually probably passable. All the plugs and sockets look all right. So you know what? I'm going to try to save this and keep this in better condition. Oh, it's even got that original GM tag on it too. All right, cool. So that's probably the original harness. It looks like it's in good enough shape. The plastic casing or whatever's cracked, but that's 10 cents at the auto parts store. We'll take all these components off it as well, just in case we get any moisture or any crap in it. Store those safely. And maybe even take the starter off too, just so we can give the bottom end a much better clean. All right. Now, if you haven't worked it out by now, you can probably recognize that I'm a pretty big fan of the 403 Oldsmobile engine. It gets a pretty unfair rap, simply because it was just, well, made during the height of the emissions crisis. But at the same time, it was producing 185 horsepower in its stock configuration. And if you look at all the stuff that this engine had to put up with, it's a miracle it made that much. When you have all these exhaust ports that are completely blocked and smogged into this single crossover exhaust with all of these accessories, 180 horsepower is fantastic for what it had to contend with. So you've got to remember, at the same time, the 5.7 litre 350 Chev was making what, 150 horsepower, 170, and that wasn't available in the emission states until later. So it's a bit crudded up in there, but it's not too bad. Spray it with a bit of WD, I think that contact should come off pretty easily. But I mean, for what it was a pretty lightweight engine. It was definitely fuel efficient contrasted to the other V8s at the time, and it made more horsepower than the conventional L80 400 Pontiac. So I actually think it's a pretty robust engine that makes more than enough power for the purpose of just kind of cruising around. It'll spin the tires in first and second gears without any issues. Okay, what I think we'll start doing now is we'll probably just start trying to degrease and get all the sludge off the front of the block, because it's pretty bad. I've given it a bit of a hit with some brake cleaner to wash off, so we can at least start getting towards all the accessories, but there's like 40 years of grease and grime on it, so you can see how much crap's coming off it. Anything up down on the engine sensor. We'll give all that a wash before we bring it back inside as well. As you can see, it's all just dropping off. There's heaps all over it. Oh yeah, it's full of grime. It's probably had an oil pump leak, because you can probably see all that orange stuff. That looks like some Celastic or something that they would have had to seal the front oil gallery. So it's probably had plenty of oil dripping and leaking off it, but the good news is that means it's probably got oil, hopefully. Last I checked it did, but it doesn't seem to be turning over again. But what's cool is that looks like the original timing cover gauge, which is plastic, so normally they're always destroyed, so the fact that it's on there is a pretty good sign. I'm going to have to be very careful when removing that, because we definitely want to save them. I don't think they reproduce them for the 403s. Yeah, timing cover marker looks great. Actually, it hasn't cracked or anything, so we should be able to get that off okay, without damaging it at the very least. Oh yeah, man, there's heaps of sludge coming off this engine. Okay, check this out. Probably comes as no shock, but man, this thing was full Celastic special. And if you look near the main crank, you can see there's actually still a lot of that orange Celastic stuff in there too. So this thing's probably been hemorrhaging oil at one point. Actually, you know what? That's a good point. Probably should drain the oil out of this thing and check what the dipstick reads. I'm pretty sure it did have oil in it at one point. It used to leak a little bit, but I don't know, it sounds like there's something in there. Geez, probably should check. All right, let's check it out. Dipstick's a bit tough. You know what, actually, to be fair, that doesn't really look too bad. There's a bit of particulate and a bit of crap on the dipstick tube. That could just be dirt and gunk. To be honest, this thing doesn't even really reach down to the bottom because the housing there is a bit crimped, so the tube doesn't go all the way in. Let's have a look. Oh, it's got oil in it. And you know what? That's not that black. I don't know about you, but that's still a bit like yellowy. Yeah, it's black. Like, but for a 20-year-old engine that hasn't been, or 40-year-old engine that hasn't been started in 20 years, I don't know. That doesn't seem that bad. Like, I expected much, much worse. As I'm sitting here going through and disconnecting the wiring harness off the engine, I'm thinking to myself, this alternator is really strange. It's got no plug or fitting at the top where like the blower resistor wire is meant to go to. And that's when I've realized the alternator is actually on upside down. So, okay, it's a bit of a strange one, but you know what? I noticed too there was no part number on it. So once we get this harness off, we might even take the alternator off just to see if it's the original date-coded one. They do have a part number that'd be specific to this engine. You know, okay, it is upside down, I don't know why. Oh, I guess it fits. I mean, it looks fine. You couldn't really tell until you looked a bit more closely at it. Probably even saved that harness from perishing a little bit. To be honest, would have kept the heat off it. Oh no, actually, no, it's probably closer to the manifold, so quite the opposite. All right, let's get this alternator off and see what we're looking at. All right, it looks like it's a 716 bolt holding it on the back. Yep, here it is. That's coming off nice and easy. All right, that's that rear ground. That's come off pretty good. Just going to screw that back on there so we know where that nut is. Could get on there a bit easily. All right, what size bolt is that? I reckon that's a 1/2 inch. See, the bolt's on backwards too. I didn't even notice that. The bolt's mounted to the back. Yeah, that looks like a 1/2 inch. All right. Let's see how this comes off. Bit of resistance, otherwise that's not too bad. Yep, no worries, that's off. That doesn't look original, but that's okay. We'll hold on to that for now. Come on. Alternator front. What's a different size? There you go, I guess to show that they don't match. Alright, that's bigger than a 1/2 inch. Let's give the 916 a crack. Yep. Alright. There we go. I don't think there's anything else holding it on. It's only just the two from the front. I don't think the 403s have an alternator support bracket at the back like some of the Pontiac engines do. Jeez, it's a long threaded bolt. It's one of the neighbours, old Italian mechanic. Wanted to see what was going on. This must be that long threaded front bolt. Yeah, okay, this is an old specific one too. You gotta hold on to this because if you lose it, it's a weird bolt to replace. Because this goes through the ear of the alternator, the front bracket, and then into that long aluminium bracket. Jeez. It's got enough thread on it or what? Getting there. No, still more.
20 minutes later.
Almost there. All right. Okay, if you're missing a bolt from your alternator in your 403, that's the one you're looking for. See if it's in your bolt bucket. And, okay. Oh, I hate seeing that. Always pisses me off. This happened on my pace car as well. Reman, not the original alternator. Oh, say no more. Looks like 2003. Let's see if we look at the part number in this and discover what that's off. But there we go. All right, alternator's not original either. Full of surprises. Okay, let's see what this alternator is off. Sprayed the label here with a little bit of WD-40. Okay, this is part number 1103094. Damn it, this is another Chev one. Okay, this is a remanufactured alternator that was off a 1980 GMC truck or a Chevrolet truck. What is it with all the bloody GMC and Chev truck shit on this motor? Alright, well, again, alternate it straight in the bin. It's going in the recycling. I've got to try and see if we can find a date-coded 78403 one. Well, at least we know what that's off now. Okay, we're getting somewhere with the top of this manifold now. We've got a lot more room to work with. We've got all the harness and all the stuff that came off all the sensors okay. Everything on there seemed to have pretty good contact, so it was all mostly clean. A lot of the vacuum trees are all still together. I don't think this is where they're meant to go, but these are the correct parts. That is definitely one of the original check valves. I've seen that on a few of the other ones. The vacuum trees look good. They don't look broken or anything like that, so we're going to try and carefully take those off. I have never seen this fitting before. I don't know what that is. I've never seen that on another 403 before. I'll take it off carefully because it looks kind of correct. And yeah, all the vacuum trees on top of the intake look okay. We've got a couple of loose bolts, which I don't know how long they've been sitting there. That looks like it's off that heater stove element. I've seen a few of those before. Not actually sure what that does, but I can tell that those bolts look like they're going to be really well cooked in there. All right, let's vacuum at the top of this manifold. We'll clean everything off it and we'll see where we can go from there. Alright, I knew this water passage run was going to be hard to break, so... Wow, it's like Mars. It's very red with dust. Alright, whatever this thing is... I actually don't know what this is. It's like a temper... Oh, okay, there we go. What is this thing again? I don't know what this is. Like a heater element or something like that. They always rust out and break at the top. Wow, that was tough to get off. Yeah, okay, no surprise. Yeah, that was really rusty. Standard. I think it's got something to do with a temperature or like a heater stove or something. Alright, well, you know what? Those bolts actually came off pretty nicely. Gave them a really good soak in WD. Tapped them a little bit. Looks like clay. Like they were that rusted and red. Okay, go figure. Alright, they came off pretty good. I think next, tackling the EGR valve. These always go bad. And you know what? Have a look how rusted that is. It actually looks like the EGR valve has snapped. It's that rusted. These always go bad. Even on my 79, they were toast. And those bolts were a headache to go at on almost every cast iron manifold I've seen off a 403. These studs are snapped off. So I think we're going to have a real challenge getting these off, but we'll soak them and we'll see how that comes off. Alright, let's soak it a bit more in a bit of WD. See if it's going to make any difference. Maybe because it's cracked in there, the WD will seep in. We might have a bit of chance. Let's see, you know, that's just going to have a spanner go on it. You can't use a socket, but alright, no problem. I'm going to say that's a 1/2 inch. Fits on there pretty nice. Concrete solid. Not going to budge at 1 millimeter. Alright. Come on, let's give it a try. Oh, see, I don't like that bolt already. Nah, it's already moving too much. Oh, not 1 millimeter. Oh, those ones are always so hard to pop. Yeah, I saw this being a problem. Okay. No. Damn. Makes you feel like you're going nuts. See, look at some of the other ones that are on there that broke off. They weren't too bad. Okay. I want to get that hammer, just in case, because they break. These bolts always break. Nothing. Alright, we're going to put some damage onto that thing. We're going to see what we can come up with. To give you an idea how much of a pain these things are to go off, the casing is breaking before the bolts will. Which is fine, because this EGR thing is dead. I mean, I don't even think I'm going to put another EGR valve back on there. I mean, even if you did, new ones are so cheap. New gaskets and everything. But these bolts always fuse. They always lock up. I'm going to try maybe get a breaker bar or something like that, because these need a lot of force. And the problem is, because of the way the valve UFO thing is on top of them as well, you can't get a lot of space in between to get some leverage. Unless you've got a giant socket, it ain't going to happen. Alright, no surprise, but it's mission abort on the EGR valve for now. It's probably going to be easier to take the manifold off and try and get it off on a vise or a press, as opposed to just trying to get it off on the stand. Another handy thing to do is just take a video of where all your vacuum lines go. So that way, if we throw everything back on there later on down the track, we know how all the vacuum lines should be routed. To be honest, most of them are probably for the smog pump and they're probably not going to go back on, but it's just handy in case. Okay, let's get started on some of these accessories. So I've smashed all these bolts with a bit of degreaser and I hit them with a bit of the wire brush just to kind of loosen them up because they were clogged up. They were just totally full of gunk. Like, I reckon it would have been too hard to get the socket head on them without just filling it full of crap. I'm just going to touch the back of them, just a touch WD. I don't think it's going to really need it, but we'll put it on there anyway. They look like, yeah, they're probably about 1/2 inch. Off she goes, nice and easy. But yeah, as mentioned previously, the 403 was only manufactured for a couple of years. So it started out in 1977. It was kind of like Oldsmobile to the discontinuation of the Oldsmobile 455. So the same way kind of how Pontiac brought out the 400 W72 to replace the 455 that was cancelled in 1976. Originally, this wasn't even ever going to be considered for a Firebird, but after the 400 Pontiac would no longer pass CAFE emissions requirements in California and high altitude states. Oh, that's another one of those rare 403 long weird threaded bolts. We'll hold on to that one. See, after the 400 Pontiac was discontinued in all the high altitude and the California emission states, they needed something to fill the 6.6 litre roll. So they weren't going to use a 5.7 litre engine from Chevrolet or anything like that. They were going to use another 6.6 litre engine, and that's when they kind of outsourced it to Oldsmobile. Because at the end of the day, it produced the same horsepower. It was producing 185, whereas the L78 400 by that point was doing 180. It was still producing the same amount of torque, 320 foot-pounds, but the 403 here was doing it at a lower RPM band, and it still fit in the engine bay of a second-gen Firebird pretty comfortably. So it just seemed like the most logical choice. Now, see, this is one thing you're probably looking at as well, the bracketry and all this front accessory harnesses. All of this stuff was specific to the Firebird. So if you had like a G-body Olds that had the 403, all of the brackets and all of the accessories were mounted in a different manner. So that's why these brackets can be pretty tricky to come across. Well, especially nowadays, because so many of the 403 cars were parted out and a lot of this stuff isn't reproduced, which makes it all the more challenging to source. And some of them were aluminium brackets from factory, which I don't think they did on many Pontiac engines. Maybe the 301 Turbo, but before that, not many of them really had a lot of aluminium accessory brackets. So, alright, see, this is the problem too. These power steering pumps, they're press-on. So getting that front pump off is a real pain in the butt, which is why I'm just trying to remove the bolts, holding that bracket in from the inside, and they're coming loose. It's just a pain in the butt to get them to turn. So yeah, even though this engine was only offered in California until 1979, it was still a pretty reasonable engine. So, like with this 1978 Firebird Formula, it was a factory 403 car, which was a pay extra option. If you wanted the 6.6 litre engine, it was 2 levels above the standard engine. I think at the time you would have got the LG3 or the LG4 305 Chevrolet. That was the standard power plant for the Formula. And if you paid a little bit extra, you got a 5.7 litre engine, which in 1977 actually got you the 350 Oldsmobile. So this wasn't even the only Oldsmobile engine to go into a second generation Firebird. You could also get the 350 as well. But after that, they stopped using the Oldsmobile 350 as much, and then came the LM1 350 shed. So in 78 and 79, if you had a Formula and you ordered the 5.7 option, you got the LM1 350 shed, which I think was the standard engine in the Corvette anyway. They used that in a lot of stuff, in the Camaro, the Corvette, just another corporate GM engine, nothing special. Alright, that's trickier than most to take off, so I think there's one more bolt that's holding this upper accessory bracket in somewhere. Actually, no, maybe there isn't. Oh no, yeah, there is. There's one down there. Alright, let's take that one. The only thing that... Oh, okay, that's actually a different size. That's not a 1/2 inch either. Alright, let's pop it down the sides. Oh, sorry, it is a 1/2 inch. The others, I think, were 9/16. There we go. That should get this accessory bracket off. It's the primary alternator one. Regardless of if you had air conditioning or a non-air conditioning car like this Formula was, I think these brackets were all completely the same across the 77 to 79 Firebirds. even if it was a federal or an emission state one, they still receive the same one. Spray going to come out. Yes, it is. Oh, don't want to lose that spacer. That spacer down there always goes missing. Even if you find the brackets, you're probably not going to get the spacer with them. Oh, that one there. Oh yeah. That's a pain in the butt to find if that's missing. Okay, that one's off. I'm going to put all these bolts in a Ziploc bag because they're pretty tricky to come across. You don't want to lose them. All right, yeah, we should be able to get that one off next. All right, just to make life a little bit easier, to take this power steering stuff all off, because that press-on fitting's such a pain, it'll just be easy to just take the whole pump off, because once you remove that bolt, that's basically all that's holding it in here. That one looks like another ½ inch. You know what? Let's see if we can just squeeze the socket in. Take the extension off. Let's give it to it. I think we can sneak that in there. Oh, just. No, that's a 916. Just because it's so easy to lose these bolts and it's so hard to get new ones. Normally, as soon as I've taken one off and the part's completely removed off there, I put the bolt just back in the same slot. So once I've recovered all the brackets and blasted them and powder coated, you know exactly where it's supposed to go. Alright, I'm not going to go too crazy with this bolt because once this comes out, the power steering pump's going to drop and it looks like it's going to be good enough. I reckon it'll still work. So I'm going to try hold on to this power steering pump, see if we can reuse it. Almost there, just a couple of turns and I reckon that's off. Okay, power steering pump removed. If you have a look at the back here, that's the 403 Firebird specific bracket. Well, 350 I suppose as well. 350 Olds anyway. Cool, that looks like it's come off pretty easily. Alright, we'll throw that bolt back in there and I think we'll take this aluminium support bracket off. Now that we're really getting into it, I don't think there's actually too much left at the front of this engine. You can see the engine crane's very thankful, the engine stand's very thankful for that because it's so much more weight off the front of it. You can see that these things are really front heavy too because you've got all the accessories, all the main journal parts, all this cast iron just hanging off the front of your engine. Okay, there we have the Firebird. There we go, part number in there too, 499 373 aluminium. Oh, you can see a little bit of the transfer between the original GM corporate blue paint on the back of this aluminium bracket. See, these were only bare aluminium from factory. These weren't painted or coated. Same as one of the 403 Firebird aircon brackets. So that's pretty cool. We'll just blast that one up, coat it, and that'll go back on the engine. Alright, I think we're going to get started removing the smog pump. And to get started, I think I'm going to knock these heat hoses out of the way. Grab the socket. Let's have a look. I reckon these little screws on the end here, I feel like they're going to be a 3/8. Yep, that'll do it. Just untighten them. Makes it easy to get this vacuum hose off. Or heater hose, should I say. These are actually relatively new. These wouldn't be the original ones. So someone's actually tried, or at least restored these heater hoses before. Maybe this had to go through a smog inspection not too long ago in the grand scheme of things, so someone must have tried to get this back on the road. Yeah, these definitely aren't original. That's just Napa heater hoses. That's like an American auto parts store, so they're not original. Someone's tried before. Even the finish on top of the fitting there for the the AIR injection lines, that's really shiny. That looks really new. The part number's still on there as well. Yeah, okay, so these things actually look like they were somewhat well preserved. Someone's tried for these. This one's got two fittings on it, so this one probably wasn't sealing too good or had a bit of a vacuum leak or something. I don't think we're going to keep this smog pump. Like, it's cool that it's all original and all that stuff, but, like, it's just not good for the engine. Like, it's sort of better for the environment, I suppose, because all that really does is inject cold air into the exhaust and also inject cold air in the exhaust to help burn off all the unburned fuel vapors that end up in the catalytic converter. But, I mean, funnily enough, this car did have the original AC Delco pancake catalytic converter on it, but, you know, who the hell's going to use that thing again? It's completely blocked off. Hopefully the panel beater didn't chuck that out because that was still underneath the car when it was there. Alright, this thing's not loosening up. That screws all the way off. Take that fitting off. Doesn't want to budge. Maybe that's why they had two. Actually, no, that does make sense. Geez, that's really on there. That fitting's almost completely off. It's still not coming loose. Oh, it's getting there now. Come on. Off you go. Alright. This one's got a different pattern. This one looks maybe a bit more original. Yeah, the fitting there looks a bit more worn too. These don't look like they've ever been replaced, which is interestingly enough. Okay, what are we going to hit next? Yeah, let's get these two front bolts off. I don't think we need to take... Oh, we might need to take that pulley off the front of the smog pump, which would be a little bit of a pain. Oh no, you know what? I reckon we'll give it a try. We'll see if we can get that off. Let's have a look. I'm going to throw a 916 on it. There's a big nut on the back of it. Oh, nice and smooth, coming off real easy. Really pays to just soak everything in a bit of WD-40 well before you start, just so all that oil can seep in and you can get a good head start on everything. That came off really easily. How about this bolt now? Oh, not really. Yeah, you can kind of get it in there. Don't really want to scratch my sockets there, but it's coming off. It's putting a line in the socket. Oh, I don't want to ruin it. I feel like this wouldn't be too easy to take off, like the pulley, because it's got these 3 screws. As you turn each screw, might be a pain to remove. I'll keep trying. No, you know what? Let's just put the spanner on it. Where's the spanner? Yep, tighten that down. How many turns? This, I reckon, will have heaps of turns because this thing looks like it's threaded all the way through. It's definitely all the original bolts and accessories, but when it comes to the smog stuff, I don't think anyone's ever going to want it. You see heaps of them on eBay. There's recores for saleable online. No, I don't think anyone's going to want this stuff. I'll take it off anyway. I'll get all the brackets and stuff powder coated with the rest of the car brackets and stuff, just to say, oh, it's there, it's come with it, but I don't think you'd want it. Because it's like, what would you do with it? Just have it sitting there rolling around, taking up space in the trunk? You'd never put it back on the engine. Maybe on an extremely high level Y82 or something, but like it's just a W50 formula. Yeah, this thing's going to take ages. I think it is threaded all the way through. Oh, that bolt's going to take forever. All right, let's work on some of the other brackets while we're here anyway. That's a different size. I think that's back down to 1/2 inch. Swap those out. That way we'll keep the sockets where they're supposed to be. I think it is. See, that's the thing. You've got this AIR pump on the front of your engine. It's drawing power from your crankshaft. It's taking up space on the engine. It's adding weight to the car. And then on top of that, it's basically blocking off your exhaust ports. So, like, I don't know if cars still use these. Because when you think about it, if you look at like a modern V8, I don't think you see a smog pump like that. I know my 87 GTA has something similar, but it's a much more compact iteration. It's not this giant pump that just sits on the front of your engine, soaking up all the power. Is there any support bracket from the back? No. Okay, cool. I think we should be able to just take that off then. There's no nut on these either, so it looks like the bracket itself is threaded. What's this? Is this a halfer? Yeah, it's a halfer. Is that meant to be a bolt? No, maybe it's just got a thread coming off the front. Yeah, it just had a nut on the end, and maybe that's just threaded. Okay, cool. They've got to have all these support brackets on it because this thing weighs heaps. Especially with the pulley and the belts pulling against it. It's got to be well supported. Otherwise that'd just buckle. Come off the front of the engine. What's that one? Okay, so this bolt's a lot bigger, and there's one more bolt in there too. I'm going to say they're 9/16. Is there anything else holding on this one? No. See, what's interesting too is this is the non-air conditioning bracket setup. So normally when you have an air conditioning one, the bracket setup pushes the compressor more to the side because it's not as needed. Whereas on an air conditioning Firebird, space is really at a premium. You don't have too much room to work with. So for a non-AC 403, you have this bracket setup in particular, which just adds to the uniqueness of this formula because, again, most Firebirds by 1978 came with air conditioning. Even though it was a really extremely expensive pay extra option, the majority of them still had it. I think the exact numbers is around 80 to 85%. So if you have a Firebird, a late 70s Firebird that doesn't have air conditioning, that is actually much rarer than one that does. All these bolts definitely look original. I don't think this has ever come off before. Because you could get these remanufactured, but it doesn't look like a reman job. I think this thing's going to drop the second that comes off. Oh, that thread's there. We'll see. See how heavy this thing is. Yeah, that bolt's coming. I can feel it's about to give way. Alright. I think they made a few 400 Pontiacs that came with all this equipment as well before they canned the 6.6 litre Pontiac engines for emission states altogether. Because if you had a Firebird in California in 70 or 76, the standard engine was still the 400. Okay, we've got a vacuum one at the back that's hanging on. Off she goes. Look at this big bastard. Oh, never mind. Look how easy it was to remove that. Bracket off. Another bracket off. And here we have the smog pump. Look at this giant bloody thing. Just sitting there pumping air around and just basically wrecking your engine. Sounds like it still spins freely. It's pretty rusted at the back, but oh, look at that. If only people cared about these like quadrajets, that part number might actually do something for me. Actually, 17056. If this is anything like a quadrajet, that 6 would mean this is a 1976 smog pump. Maybe this is a Rico job too. Well, either way, it's off. And look how much more room you've got on the engine already. Like, all this more space to work with. Easy access to the fuel pump, the sensors, the heater hoses, the oil filler neck. It's like a completely different engine.